to say welcome to Firesign Chats with Angel. That's me. Um, I'm happy to welcome a near and dear old friend of mine. Uh, his name is Fred Frey. Say hello, Fred.
Hello.
Well, I know you primarily as a drummer, but you also play guitar and sing. Can
Yeah,
I run? Yeah.
that's an unfortunate byproduct of the pandemic. So,
Oh, yeah.
you after the first couple weeks where you just sit around and drink or wonder if the world is going to end, a lot of people took up either a new hobby or something like that, and that was mine. So,
Oh,
and
wow.
actually, guitar was just sort of a necessity because I was writing a bunch of songs in GarageBand and just sort of like playing them out on that little keyboard in there.
Yeah.
And then I eventually, when this became a band, then I had to learn how to play it all. So I
Mm,
kind of did everything in reverse. So it was kind of fun. It was like it was like playing Guitar Hero to your own stuff, or
there you go.
learning covers of your own songs.
I never thought about it that way. Yeah, I guess if you, because I'm not a gamer, so I
Right. Oh, well, yeah, that's also part of the problem here is where this all started from. Is my ultimate dream of starting a video game rock band
oh,
or
wow.
rock band that was based or at least inspired by video games. So, whatever. When you've got like practically 2 years to learn something new, run with it.
Yeah.
And here we are.
And here we are. And we'll get to that. But first, I want to ask, so obviously, I know you as a drummer for Mary Tyler Morphine, uh, one of the best power trios in Chicago.
Oh
Um,
dear.
yeah. And then of course your work with the Tossers, which I definitely want to ask about that. But something, like as I was, thinking about and meditating about meeting up with you over the internet, there's not a lot I know about you, Fred. Like even, since we've known each other, like, we never really sat down and be like, well, let's talk about our history. What did you do? But how did it all start for you, Fred? Where does
Oh,
your origin story begin?
oh dear. Well, and that, before I answer that, that's funny you mentioned that because so much of like all the people I've known since the 90s, we've all played in bands and it's always been kind of talking shop and playing shows. And, you and we'll talk about this more later. I mean, you and I were on the road together and, the whole thing. And it's funny you mentioned that because you can go a long time knowing somebody without really knowing them because
Yeah.
of what you're involved in. But yeah, I mean, just like a lot of people our age, like I actually started playing drums because a lot of my friends were a little bit older. I knew a bunch of dudes who went to Fenwick, all boys Catholic school, who were a little bit older than me. A lot of those guys, um, and they were a little bit older, and I wanted to kind of hang out with those dudes, and they were all playing music, and they were mostly guitar players and bass players and singers,
Yeah.
and I wanted to be part of that. I didn't really drums wouldn't have been my first choice, but I just figured when I was like 14 years old, if I start playing drums, I can probably play with whoever I want if I just get halfway decent. And that's kind of how I got introduced. That's really how I got introduced to punk rock and especially like the Chicago suburbs punk scene, if you even want to call it that.
Where's
But
Fenwick? I'm not familiar.
Fenwick, it's in Oak Park. So some mutual friends of ours, like Miguel Echemendia, went there, and Matt Dorica, who was part of Punk Rock Tacos,
Sure.
uh, and Acton's Dictum went there, and a bunch of dudes who were like doing art, drawing or playing music or booking shows and stuff. And I was, these guys were all like maybe 16, 17, and I was like 14 or 15. And I
Mm.
thought all these guys were so cool. And I really wanted to be part of that.
Sure.
So I kind of pieced together a drum set and started playing with my next door neighbor. And I met Miguel, at a pretty early age. And My first show I ever played was at the Thirsty Whale. I don't know if you remember that place
Oh,
out in
of
the Burg,
course.
but it was an all ages venue. It was real shady, probably run by the mob. They would give anybody a show there. And my first band played a couple shows there because that was the only place we knew that would even take us. But then when I met these older dudes, like older, as in like 2 or 3 years older, they're talking about playing at VFW halls and YMCA's and basements. And I'm like, what the hell? This is the YMCA. Like, what the hell does that even, what are you talking about? And I remember when I first went, I went to the it was either the Elmhurst YMCA or the Elmhurst VFW. And it was like a full on, it was probably, oh, I'm trying to think. It was either like Oblivion or, God damn, some of these band names will come to me. But these were like packed shows with people crowd surfing, and it was all 13, 14, 15-year-old kids. And it was the coolest thing in the world. And I hadn't really been to punk rock, so to speak, like the musical genre,
Mm.
but that kind of scene, just like the DIY thing, was so attractive to me, really for no other reason than it was the only way we could play. It was there was no other outlet than playing these kind of thrown together shows where somebody rents out a video hall. So that's really what got me going, and that's kind of what got me introduced to a lot of people I played with later when I was in college and when I was an adult.
And what years were that? That
Oh
well, yeah.
God, that would have been the well, when I first started playing in bands, that would have been like 1991 or 92.
Oh,
So I
okay.
think it was right after McGregor's closed. I was a little young for all that, but I'd heard a lot about it, and some of my older friends had been going to those shows. And it just was, honestly, when I was younger, my only exposure to music was the Illinois Entertainer. So I knew about Medusas, and I knew about the Metro, and I knew about the Thirsty Whale and stuff like that. And I would go to Guitar Center and get that free paper,
Hmm.
every month, and just kind of daydream about these places I was going to play when I was old enough. But then, like, kind of getting involved in the punk rock thing allowed, it just opened a door to be able to play, not have to wait around. You could start playing really cool shows in somebody's basement or in a school gym on a Sunday afternoon, and kind of get that same, scratch that same itch, I guess, kind of.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to flip this around on you. I was trying to think of the first time I met you and the first time I saw you play.
Yeah. What's your memories of that?
And tell me if I'm wrong, but I have a vision of either we just went to go see a show. I was probably playing with the Letter Bombs at the time, and it was V Reverse at maybe a school gymnasium or something like that. There was no, wherever it was, there was no stage, and you guys were just going buck wild. And I think probably Scott Thompson or Rob Brandt knew you through, or Scott probably knew the guys in V Reverse because Doug Ward was in that band,
Of
wasn't he?
course. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So me through Michelle Blasick over
Hmm.
at the Underdog Loft. Boy,
Hmm.
we're gonna pull out some old
Oh, this is what I
terminology.
was expecting. Yeah, I know. Underdog. Yeah.
Yeah, so because and you tell me to slow down or stop talking because
No.
now I've got one in me. I'm gonna start rambling. The first real punk rock band I played in, I was going to DePaul, and I was taking a class called the Sociology of Rock and Roll or something like that. It was one
Mm.
of the electives, and I met Scott Thompson, who ran Harmless Records.
Right. Right.
And they had already started the Letter Bombs, but their drummer wasn't really working out. And I had already had kind of the VFW YMCA show stuff in high school. And when I got to college, I wasn't really sure what I was going to get involved with. But I started chit-chatting with Scott in this class, and he mentioned this band, and I went and I jammed with him and Michelle and Rob at the
Hmm.
Underdog Loft. It was still the Underdog Loft at the time that the label was being run out of. And I walked in, and it's this dingy loft above what I believe was like a juice factory or something.
Adwala.
It had been the
It was in a
Odwalla Juice Company.
and it always smelled of like rotting citrus when you
Oh,
walk
it
in.
always had a real some essence to it.
Hmm.
And it was a dark, dingy loft. And I know
Hmm.
um, Rob Roy
Hmm.
had built out a bunch of lofts, and uh, there were a bunch of people living in there, renting rooms. There was a rehearsal space. There was a stage in the main room. And that's when I started jamming with the letter bombs. And that was just sort of that's really how I started meeting everybody, because they would have, you probably remember, they would have some insane parties and shows
Oh
at
yeah,
that loft.
for
And I'm
sure.
sure you went to plenty of those too.
I went to them. I played a couple. Yeah. I remember going there. Well, this was when we first got together in like late 95, I think fall of 95. And yeah, same thing. I mean, I knew of Underdog from, the earlier, early 90s. Yeah, Rob
Well,
Roy.
and when I was in high school, a friend of mine's band got on one of the Underdog comps, the Octoon Chicago comps, and
Okay.
I was like, oh man, this dude is a god. Like, he got on like a record label comp, and then here I am at the Underdog Loft rehearsing with a band. How cool is that? Like,
I mean,
everything was so fresh and exciting back then.
yeah. No, it
And
was, I mean,
honestly, I still get so excited about every stupid little show I play now, or anything I'm doing. It's that has never worn off. Bands coming and going, and people fighting and having falling outs and getting back together. Like, I that's all just part of the relationships. And I never there's never a moment where I'm not excited about doing this kind of stuff. Well, all ages shows, lots of different, weird sounding bands. Not everybody that was the one thing that I really that blew me away in the 90s was, the Fireside days. You'd go to see like a ska show, and then you'd go see like, when I got introduced to hardcore, I was like, wait a second, is this punk rock? Like, I don't like, it wasn't so much about the genres, right? There
yeah.
there was kind of a thing there, but for the most part, it was just, is it all ages? Like, is it a bunch of dirty scumbags like me? That was what made it so much fun. And the idea of going to all ages shows back then was just so cool. And of
Yeah.
course, there's that sort of thing still now, but generally not on a smaller scale. It's harder to find, I think, these
No,
days.
I agree. I mean, no, I get excited when our band gets to play an all ages show. Uh, and earlier too. I prefer the early shows. That's the thing.
Right? Oh my God.
I think
I
it was
mean,
I think it was the Minutemen. They used to I heard the story about them, like they always started their shows early because they wanted, the audience who had to go to work the next morning, you know, go check out a band and then get home at a reasonable time.
yeah,
Um,
man. I mean, I
yeah.
won't say how old either of us are, but I don't. It's been over a decade since I've wanted to be out seeing the headlining band start at 1 o'clock in the morning.
I, I, you know, I, and I always tell this to anybody who's a club owner, booker out there, please, for the sake of and I get it, traffic and all that, but start those shows early. Come on.
Oh
Like I,
God,
I,
I
I want
know. Well, then you can go kick it afterwards. You don't want people to be fatigued by the time the bands go on, and sleepy eyed. I mean,
oh yeah.
get me at 6:30 when I'm full of energy.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, I would be going to shows 3 times a week if they had shows that started at 7 o'clock.
Right? Tell you. Well, hopefully somebody's listening out there.
But I definitely know. But I definitely know I saw you. The first time I ever saw you, you were playing drums. That was the first time we met.
Okay.
I think, and then we started crossing paths later on. And then you got to know the girls in Mary Tyler Morphine probably before I really got to know you. But I think when you got in the van with us, I didn't really know you that well.
Right.
I know Ursula and Jean had really befriended you, as they did with lots of people.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I always felt like everybody's little brother back then still. So, but I mean, what a hell of an experience that turned out to be.
Oh.
That's probably why we didn't get to know each other that well. That was survival mode.
I mean, it was, yeah, we'll definitely have to talk about that trip because to this day, I always, talk about that 3 week jaunt for, there's a number of events that happened on that trip.
I don't remember how long it was. So if you told me it was 4 days, I'd believe it. If you told me it was 3 weeks, I'd believe it. I have no freaking clue, man.
Yeah.
Some of this was a long time ago.
I think the first time I met you, it was, so I'm a little blurry about it. It was either at one of the loft get-togethers, or it could have been the night you guys played at Thurston's with Johnny Vomit.
Oh, goodness me. Yeah, I almost forgot about Thurston's.
Oh yeah.
Remember loading in and out of that place?
Well, I never got to play there, but I did go down those steps.
Oh yeah.
And actually we met, or we were talking to the guitarist of Johnny Vomit at Ursula's memorial.
Oh, yeah. Roman, yeah.
And he talked about, because I was witness to Johnny Vomit falling, hitting his head against or on the floor or on the steps.
I feel like I saw that too. Isn't it funny how some of these things, like, you hear about them so much, at least in my case, it's like I don't remember if I'm remembering my own memories or somebody else's. Now I sound like I've been smoking a lot.
But no, that was, yeah. I mean, I remember that night in particular was just like a really cool night, just because, yeah, I got to see you guys play. Actually, funny story about that day. Earlier in the day, this was like I was in between jobs, and I sold my plasma so I can have enough money. What's that?
Not your television.
No,
your
no
plasma.
My actual, like, blood and plasma.
Yeah, gotcha.
So I can have money to drink at Thurston's, because I was going to go see Mary Tyler Morphine.
Oh my God! Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Oh, it was great. I definitely remember distinctly Ursula saying something about pulling your or dropping your dicks on the stage.
Oh, I don't remember that, but that surprises me 0%.
Right.
This is starting to feel like old men sitting around the fire.
Let me tell you. And all this happened before there was no cell phones around. There was no way to document anything.
I know. Well, it's so funny. When I saw you a couple weeks ago and you handed me those photos, which, thank you, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, just remember, we would go out on the road and we'd be lucky or maybe unlucky if somebody had a camera, a Polaroid, anything to document it. But just think of all the antics and the tours that went undocumented back in the 90s. Think about all the times you went out on the road and all kinds of crazy shit happened for a week or 2 weeks or whatever, and nobody took one goddamn picture of anything. You
We're
know?
living in the moment.
Oh, well, it's true. I mean, there's a there were definitely times even back then where I was like, God damn it, did nobody take one single picture of this shit? Like when we would do some of these bigger shows with Mary Tyler Morphine, maybe someone would be there with a camera and maybe we would see them years later, but it wasn't like today. Oh, they're good old days
Oh yeah,
when
yeah.
you're fleeting and never to return again.
Right, right. I mean, I guess I'm lucky that I took a number of pictures on that trip, which so I
Oh,
so I want to know like how did you end up in Mary Tyler Morphine? How did that start?
oh, well, okay. So that's when I earlier when I said when I started going to the loft, that's when like things that's when I kind of met everybody I know now. Gene and Ursula had started this band with another girl. I don't know if you remember, but there was another singer back,
Mm.
Elise, back when they first started, and they wanted to get a female drummer, and but they did want someone to kind of fill in the meantime until they found someone. So maybe this was before I knew you, and this is probably none of this would fly today, but we all thought it was so funny back then. They said, all right, well, you're going to play drums for us until we find a girl drummer, and in the meantime you're going to dress in drag to
Mm.
just not trying to fool anybody by any means, but just as kind of like a ha ha ha, whatever.
Yeah.
And I did that for probably like 5 or 6 shows. And it was funny because I think the first time I played with Mary Tyler Morphine was at the loft, and a bunch of my friends came, and they were like, when they found out that it was me in like a tight like leather skirt and like the thing, a couple of my guy friends were like, yeah, we were all looking at over across the room thinking, who's that girl with those extreme features?
Extreme.
Who's that ugly girl with this like very angular weird? I mean, I was like 19 or 20 years old. And I think like maybe, and I'm probably getting some of this wrong, but after a handful of shows, they're like, we're either too lazy to find another drummer or whatever. Just stop wearing the get-ups and let's just be a band. And that's when I went from being like their temporary drummer to being in the band, because we all became very, very close friends. I mean, as you know, especially Ursula and I mentioned this, when we were at that event a couple weeks ago. I think everybody had probably had ups and downs with her, and she over the years, and just like anybody else, like you and I had gone. Not that we had a falling out or anything,
No.
but I probably have gone 2, 3, 4, 5 years without seeing you. But that's kind of the nice thing about kind of the thing we had going back in the day is the music and the shows and everything held us all together, regardless of whether you were all buddying around. We were all kind of working when we were working for $15 or whatever for the
Working for that burrito
yeah,
after the
working for
set.
that burrito and a floor to sleep on. Um, but yeah, so and then that was probably like 1997, 98, something like that. It's amazing that band really wasn't around that long, because I want to say we broke up for good more or less in 2001, 2002.
Oh wow.
Might even before that. But back then 4 or 5 years felt like a hell of a long time.
Oh yeah. And especially at our, at our, because I think I was, yeah, I was in my, yeah, like, I was almost 27, I want to say. Yeah, I was like 25, 26 at at the time I felt like, I'm already over the hill because a lot of my other friends started bands, early on and we were like, had broken up and already started their second or third band. Here I am
Oh,
just
sure.
getting started, but realizing, damn, we were so young. And, but yeah, so okay, so yeah, so Mary Tyler Morphine was started around what 97, 98, because I think that's when I hooked up with you guys around 98 into 99.
Yeah, it's got that. Maybe it was even, maybe we started a little earlier than that, but like we really started getting going in probably 97 or 98. And
And
it
that
was
was
all
around.
very moving. That's why I don't remember anything because so much happened in like a 4 year period.
Yeah. No, I mean that's no, you're right. It's like it was like pretty much it was like action packed. And of course, when you guys weren't playing, we were going out together. I think there was
Of
like
course.
a good chunk of time that I spent with you and Miguel and the ladies and
Yeah,
um
selling our blood. Selling our blood to go. Man, I sold, speaking of selling your blood, I sold, I had a great record collection that I that my brother gave me when he upgraded to CDs. And
okay.
I sold that awesome record collection. I think I sold it to Reckless Records for like $75,
Ah,
and for going out money, because that's really what it was all about. We weren't thinking about like, oh, I'm gonna want to sit around and listen to these records in 15 or 20 years. Like, let's get at it right now.
yeah, yeah.
I'll
No,
probably trade for something
yeah.
better, PBR and Iron City beer.
Oh my lordy. Yeah, the Lilas. Yeah, that was the that was I remember that was the beer of the yeah, I think it was like the official maritime warping beer for a minute. It was Iron City.
Oh, the song about it.
Yeah.
We wrote.
I am a land of tolerance. I guess you'd say that I'm unstable. All of this has no balance. It makes a lot of sense to me. Why, why, why?
Yeah.
We wrote. It's just that's what happens when you're in your 20s. You just write the stupidest songs about the stupidest shit.
But yeah, I mean that's and
Pitch.
so in that whole time you only came out with a 7 inch, right? And maybe some comp tracks.
Yeah, so that that's the funny thing about that band is like we came out with a 7 inch. We did a we did a split tape through Smiling Bob Records with the
Oh,
Arrivals, which split tape. There you go. There's one. There's one for you. And maybe we did another 7 inch, and we did a bunch of comps, and then we started recording a full length album um, with Dale Miners, who had done a bunch of really cool stuff. His studio was called Ghetto Love Studios,
oh yeah.
and he had done I can't remember. We'd done most of our stuff before that with Chuck Uchida at Attica.
Mm,
Um, we worked with, oh God, he did the first Alkaline Trio record. Matt Allison. We did some stuff with
mm.
him. And then we got together with Dale and we started recording this record where basically Billy and Zach from Thick Records had said, make this record, do it on your dime, and we're going to put out this record. And you guys are going to be a Thick Records band. And, I'm thinking, cool, like so many cool bands, the Blue Meanies and I know the Tossers had done stuff on there. And I was like high on life. And we had recorded about we'd fully tracked about half of that record, and I think the rest of it still exists somewhere. Um, but the band broke up in the middle of recording that record, and that was like one of the most heartbreaking things uh, that I'd experienced. I was in my 20s, so not a lot of heartbreak uh, leading
Yeah.
up to that. The time that was pretty awful, and what was the most awful is that we were still stuck with the tab for the recording. And when you're trying to come up with, and I don't know if it was $3,000 or $1,000 or $5,000, regardless of what it was, when you're in your early 20s and paying somebody off for a record that is unfinished, that was a real. I quit playing music for a little bit after that. That was a really sad moment for me.
Yeah,
Spun out a
yeah.
bunch of dough for nothing, and then your band breaks up too. When you kind of had a sure thing going with a decent record label, at least some people who believed in you. So, and that's kind of I quit playing music. I say for a while. It was probably like 6 months. But
I mean, that's like at least a year, in musician. You know, 6 months.
yeah,
I mean, I can
six
go a
months.
month or two and not play
Right,
drums, but
right.
so, well, I definitely want to ask about that because that I think I wasn't really. I think I was kind of out of the loop during that time, but leading up to, well, prior to all that, you guys were, having a great time performing, and then you guys went. We all went on that 3 week long jaunt.
Oh yeah, there
Uh,
it is.
yeah, it was no, because I was trying to do the math, and I'm like, yeah, it was. We were out for 3 weeks. Who booked it anyway? Who was the?
Ursula. Ursula. Okay, so if anybody's watching and you want to know about the most like ballin' ass human being to ever live,
Let's talk
I
about it right now.
I told you because we had him. She passed away unfortunately several months ago, and we had a memorial for her just a couple weeks ago. Which, by the way, it was so good to see. It was so good. It felt like we were at one of those old loft shows. Like there were
Mm.
all those ads from back in the day. It was awesome. Ursula was so. There was the Book Your Own Fucking Life that Maximum Rock and Roll put out. I don't know if you remember that, but every
Of
year they
course.
put out a book that had, every basement, every venue, every pizza place that did punk rock shows, and you would just call and or maybe send them a tape or something. And Ursula was the master of convincing people that they needed to have this band there. When we played in Denver with L7
Mm. And
at the
honky.
and Honky. Oh my God. At the Bluebird Theater. Is that the name of the
Yep,
place?
you're correct, sir.
I I might be making this up, but if I wasn't in the room when she made that call, I heard about it shortly thereafter. Long story short, Ursula would find out who the management was, and she would call and say, hey, I'm in this band from Chicago. It's two girls and a guy. Da 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 da. We make out on stage. Whatever she felt like she needed to say. And I just imagine that the person on the other end of the phone was like, okay, whatever you say, like that.
Please don't hurt me.
We got on shows we had no business being on. She could have gotten into PR and music management and tour management and all that kind of stuff. There wasn't anything she was ever going to do that she wasn't going to be good at. She was booking that band. She was just insane. And I'm sure there were shows that got canceled last minute that she would just call some other venues and be like, put us on the bill. And they didn't. I've never seen anything like it. This is pre, smartphone. We weren't traveling with a laptop. We didn't have internet access. We had MapQuest printed out. We had one cell phone that we shared as a band. It was my dad's cell phone that I stole. But it was good that we had it. And that was just how you did. It's incredible because with all the resources that we have now, it seems like it's actually harder to book shit now. Maybe there's too much of it. I don't, or maybe there's too many people buying for shows, or I don't know what it is. You really had to get in the dirt to book anything, and you needed to be somebody like Ursula, who would just be such a ball buster. I've never seen anything like it in my life, and she was like that with everything. Yeah. She was the toughest, most fair person I've ever met in my life. She was incredible.
And if she was on your side, it was you're in the best place.
Yeah. If she was on your, it wasn't always a guarantee what would get you on the bad side either. But if you got on the bad side, you started at zero again. You didn't go from like being 9 in her book. If you fell off, it was like you ran out of lives and you had to throw more quarters in. Like from level 1, which we all probably did a bunch of times. And maybe that wasn't no, nobody's perfect. She might have been able to be a little bit more forgiving, but I know I worked my way back into her favor a few times over the years, and it was always worth it. So, man, that was one that really hit me hard. I know we
Yeah.
all lost. We're all starting to lose our peers a little bit every so often
Yeah.
now.
Mhm.
Boy, oh boy, did that one get me. I mean, it's hard, still hard for me to talk about now.
How did you hear about Ursula's passing?
Well, I knew, and I I knew she was sick. I heard about it through a mutual friend, and I really did think, and I posted something about this online, but I really thought, oh, this is nothing. Like, this is Ursula. And I really, that's not a cop out. Like, I really did think, like, oh, fuck all that. Like, whatever. She's got cancer. Give me a fucking break. But then I started hearing more about like the severity of it. Probably, I don't know, at the very beginning of this year. And then I had been in contact with John, who she was with for many years, and they had a baby together. Where they have they have a 13-year-old together. And I started kind of communicating with the rest of the bunch. And by the time I had reached out to her, I think she had already sort of been, mostly on her way out. So, but nevertheless, man, she and I owned a home together. We had run that band together for years. We were great friends. We were looking out for each other. And kind of circling back to what I was saying earlier, there would be multiple year stretches that we might not talk at all. And kind of like anybody who was part of your 20s or your teens or whatever, like, you get other great people and you don't need to necessarily get on the phone and catch up on like how your work week was every week, but you know that those people are going to be there for you when you need them, and you'll be there for them when they need you too. And she was that for sure. I hadn't talked to her for a couple of years, and I wound up going through a divorce in like 2013, and she was one of like 4 people who reached out to me like that day. And I hadn't seen it, and before I knew it, I was over at her house, just shooting the breeze with her, like nothing, like we hadn't missed a beat.
Yeah.
And I feel that way talking to you, Angel. I mean,
I know.
seriously, I
And
can do this shit all day.
I mean, I guess this is the point of what I'm doing here is reconnecting with friends, and meeting new people along the way, but just kind of wanting to circle back to like people that I, hung out with, played music with, we spent think about it. We spent 3 weeks in that stinky van. I know Ursula, the last time I saw her, which was 2022 at Adam Norton's 50th.
Okay,
which was a lot of fun, and she was there with Ryan, or hubby, and and of course I introduced her to Athena, my lady, and right off the bat, like, oh, Angel, he was on that trip. He left us. He told a story about how we actually left her at a at a rest stop.
That was all me, man. That was all me. Although all these years later, I've forgiven myself. I mean, you learn all the rules of the road as you go, and dark van late at night, a lot of people sleeping, everybody's taking trucker speed to stay awake. All sorts of shit can go wrong. But just think about the way we all survived back then too. We left Ursula at a rest stop for about 2.5 hours before we were able to come back. No cell phone, no nothing. There was, but if anybody was going to be left at a rest area and survive it at 2:00 in the morning, it was Ursula. I don't know if anybody else in that van would have been able to fend off a bunch of meth heads and
who knows what
stop freaks.
Well, and I think wait, which mic is it? This one here? Anyway, good afternoon. My name is Angel. As Adam pointed out, I met Ursula along with Fred and a woman named Janine. We're in a band called Marital Morphine back in the 20th century here in 1999. And yeah, wonderful group, great guys. And I think it was sometime in the spring of '99 that I was able to, well, I was invited to go join Maritime Morphine on a tour back in 1999. It was, let's see, we went through the South, West Coast. As you can see, I planned all this out. I didn't tell the story about yesterday, but it was a 3-week crazy bender of a rock and roll. And I got pictures here as well. We got to see them open for L7, which was wild. And they got to see them get tattoos. I mean, it was all I can describe. It was a lot of drinking, a lot of debauchery, but it was always a good time. Ursula, it was a lot of fun to be on these trips, and sometimes, you know, for those who've ever been in bands and know, you know, being in the same room with the same group for days on end, you know, Ursula would just get really like fed up. She's like, you know what, Angel, come with me. We're going to McDonald's, and we'd go. She'd vent to me eating McDonald's. So anyway, I just wanted to tell this story, and Athena, my girlfriend over here, the last time I saw Ursula, which was at Adam's 50th at Wholesome, which was a great time, and that was the last time I'd seen her, and it was great to catch up with her until Ursula tells a story to her, and I'm going to tell you the story. I'm going to see if you can remember this. So, and I'm not sure where we were coming from. I think we were coming from Iowa. So, and of course, it was another night of just being up late, drinking, and then, you know, I think we decided to drive from the gig we just played to the next gig in Wisconsin. Remember this? And yeah, keep in mind, we were just like hungover, just tired, and I think it was, we stopped at a rest stop, and we all got out, and I just remember just being just like, I don't even know where I'm at this point.
He's leaving an important part out, and he's being kind. I was the one driving.
Oh, were you driving? Okay. So, we get back in the van. I go up into the loft of the van and sleep, and then all of a sudden I hear, "Where's Ursula?" And, you know, I'm looking under blankets, under the seats. I'm like, oh shit, we left Ursula at the rest stop. And we were what? At least a good 50 miles. Before cell phones, I think one of us had a cell phone. Okay. She didn't have one. All she had was her blanket, and she was wearing pajamas. And of course, we're thinking the worst thing possible. Meanwhile, Fred is, I was feeling so terrible for him just because he was just upset, as anybody would be, you know? Like, this is, you know, this 3 week we've been all together, you know, we're doing our best to look out for each other, and it was the one time failed. And then,
if I could interject, if you've ever seen a 20-year-old plumbing van that was gutted go across the median of the highway to do a U-turn in the ditch and on the grass, that's exactly what we did.
And screaming and crying and just be like, what's happening? And then she pulled up. She was pissed, but she saw how upset Fred was, and she quickly just like almost basically comforted him, even though, you know, who knows what could have happened. But thankfully nothing happened on that trip, and yeah. All I can say is that I wish I would have gotten to spend a little bit more time. We did have a few pings here and there, you know, her catching my band, He's Your Senior, opening for Michigan, which was great. And that kind of opened up our line of communication for a little bit. And but anyway, I have a bunch of pictures from that tour that I want to give to Ursula's old man. So if you want to check those out, and I'll give you these later. But anyway, I just wanted to share that. I love you, Ursula. We'll give it up to Ursula. Merten. Yeah. Well, and I think it was kind of leading up to that moment, that incident. It was, I mean, it was kind of like, so it was one of those things where first week you're just learning, kind of getting acclimated to the whole thing. Second week, it's a great old time. And then by the third, you're like, I'm ready to go home.
Yeah. Oh, sure, sure, sure. But I mean, you have a little, but there's a little mix of that all the way through, right? I mean, it depends on how nice your sleeping accommodations are and how
Sure.
good they are too.
I mean, we had a
But I
few
mean,
hubbles.
that was, and I was never in a fraternity, or a club or anything like that. And those were the days where it might not have been fun all the time, but you just kind of did it. Maybe you didn't even really know why. But you felt like you had a job to do. And I'm sure nowadays, like me, you probably run into people who played in some band out of Olney, Illinois, or Van Wert, Ohio, or whatever, and you might you kind of like you cross paths with people you thought you'd never see again, and it's almost like if you were in a fraternity and those are like your fraternity family or whatever. That I don't know
Yeah, your
anything.
brother.
I don't know what I'm talking fraternities.
No,
Jesus
no, no.
Christ.
That is,
But like, it
yeah.
wasn't always fun doing that stuff back then. It was shitty like a lot of the time, but you just kind of felt compelled to do it too.
And I
Oh
actually
yeah.
have some memories of like playing in this. I don't know if you remember playing in Kansas City, Missouri, in some weird bar slash venue.
I do remember that because I think we drove from there. We finished that show, and about 2 in the morning we drove to Denver that night.
So
Anyway,
we did that show and then went to Denver soon after. Wow.
we went to Denver that night. We drove to Denver from Kansas City. Whew, I can't believe I remember all this. We played some bar. I know it was the first time we played a song that we had never played before, called "Not Soon Enough," and we maybe only played it a couple times, but there wasn't very many people at that show in Kansas City. We went to that Kansas City barbecue place.
Oh, right.
It's a famous place. I don't remember what it's called. And we finished that show 2 in the morning. We got in the van. We drove to Denver because it was a really long drive, and it was dark. And you're driving through Kansas, and it's just like you're driving into a void. There's nothing in Kansas, at least
Right.
not where we were. Flat, straight shot to Denver, and you're thinking, I'm just driving down this tunnel of blackness. And then the sun comes up and you're still just driving down to nothing, for another several hours. And that was when we played in Denver. And we did 2 shows in Denver, now that I remember it, right? We played at the Bluebird Theater. And then I think the next night we played at some really cool bar, and I can't remember the name of it, where the stage was behind the bar.
I have pictures of that. That was the Lion's Den, I believe.
The Lion's Lair or the Lion's Den or something like that.
Yeah, I remember I was getting the names confused. Was he Lion's Den or Lion's Lair? Yeah, I'll have to look that up.
Yeah. Oh my God, I forgot about that. My Angel, let's do one of these every week.
We could do that.
I'm having a memory explosion right now.
Well, we definitely have to do a part 2 at some point. But so yeah,
God.
so real quick, my memory of the L7 show was when we got to the theater and knocked on the door, and one of the L7 ladies opened the door. I think it was like Danita, or who was the other lady?
Well, all I remember is the bass player was just a touring bass player.
Right.
Do you remember that?
Yes. And actually, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, and she didn't travel with the band. Her and the guitar tech traveled together, and the other 3 members kind of hung out. So, and I know Ursula I don't remember her name. God help me. I don't remember her name, but Ursula became a really close, tight that with the girl who was playing bass for them. Because I know she stayed with Ursula when they came to Chicago. The rest of the band was in a hotel, and they didn't. She was a hired gun. She didn't get to stay with the band.
Right. Wait, I'm trying to look it up right now. Yeah, actually, if I remember correctly, she was the only. She actually watched you guys watch the Maritime Morphine play.
Oh yeah. Well, she was like us, man. She was just hustling.
Right.
But yeah,
But yeah,
wow, that was a fun night, and I remember specifically that night there were a ton of people at that show, and we were selling 7 inches like crazy at the merch booth, and a kid came up to me, and he had a 7 inch that he had bought earlier, and he said, "Can I borrow a Sharpie?" And he ran off with the Sharpie. He came back, and I could see he had Gene and Ursula sign his 7 inch, and he gave me back the Sharpie and said, "Thanks, dude," and walked away. And I was like, "Well, I guess I'm never gonna get any attention in this fucking band."
oh, by the way, her name was Janice Tanaka. Does that ring a bell?
Maybe.
And I think because I remember seeing her playing with L7, and then years later, she was on stage with some like a pop musician.
Okay. Yeah, I was just a little boy back then.
Oh, Pink. She played with Pink.
Did she really?
Yeah.
Okay. What? That's crazy. That's
and Ursula
awesome.
Ursula was friends with her, and
Well, yeah, because again, I think when she was playing with L7, she was I don't know if their bass player had quit. She was just kind of a hired gun, and she and this guy who was the guitar tech traveled together by car. The rest of the band traveled in a bus,
right.
And she had to find her own sleeping accommodations in every city. Wow. She was just there to kind of play. And I'm not criticizing L7 or however they're managing their. I mean, I'm sure they were still working for money. You know, they weren't playing for fun. I mean, I'm sure they were playing for fun, but they were still making a living off of music. So who knows what that was all about. But I know when they came to Chicago, played wherever they played in Chicago, they stayed with Ursula, or that the guitar tech and that bass player stayed with Ursula when they were in Chicago.
Wow. The weirdest thing about that venue was 21 and over were only allowed on the main floor, and balcony was like the under 21 crew.
Isn't that wild? That should be the other way around, right?
Right. They should have been on, because they were more excited about you guys, Maritime Morphine, than whatever was happening. But
I don't know how the hell that. I mean, I've heard that from other people before, but I mean, again, I was having such ball back then. Plus, I don't even think I might have been like 22 or 23 when that was going on. And I didn't even start drinking alcohol until I was almost 22 years old. I was in Mary Tyler Morphine, and I did not drink. I didn't do any drugs or anything like that. And so I think when I started like having some beers and started drinking some whiskey and stuff, I got, that was like how most people are when they're 16 or 17. I was doing that at 22. So I don't remember much of that shit. I was having a ball.
Yeah. No, I think I started, well, really like by the time I turned 21, and then, but not really like, once you turn 21, you're going to start drinking. It was more like, I think just over time. And then, and that trip alone was definitely, I think I did my most drinking I've ever done.
Sure. We ate more garbage food on that trip and drank so much. And okay, so do you remember when we were in Oklahoma? No, we weren't. We were in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Do you remember that show? We played it a show. And in Tulsa, after like, I don't know, I'm going to make some of this up, but after like 5 p.m., they only sold 2% beer. And so the people at the show said, you guys have to go buy your own beer and go do it now. Or, man, I swear, Angel, maybe you weren't with us at this show. I swear to God, you had to have been, though.
I mean, it's kind of vaguely sounding familiar, but So
we were playing in a basement, and it was the most gutter ass show. It was like Lost Cross House in 1995 times 10, and by that I mean divided by 10.
Shout out to Lost Cross.
Well, oh, by the way, I learned now that Lost Cross. Here's an interesting little snippet, because we played down in Carbondale not too long ago, and the Lost Cross House is like a historical landmark. And and they've got a great sound system now, and all the cops and aldermen and all those people, they were going to shows there when they were in college, and they're preserving it as a landmark. Like, how there's a picture of it up at like the town hall or the Capitol or some shit like that. Like, they're honoring it as this, like, its legacy. It's just so funny how, like, a dirty punk rock scrapper kind of joint like that, eventually everybody grows up, and some people actually grow up to be like reputable human beings and pay homage to their roots like that. But this place was something else. We had to bring our own beer. Most of the crowd stole our beer. Sitting in the van after the show doing an interview for a zine, and a fight broke out in the house, and everybody seemed like maybe they weren't doing so well on some whatever substances they were doing, and we fucking hightailed it out of there in the middle of the night to go stay at like a travel lodge or something, because it just became incredibly unsafe, as a lot of punk rock shows in the 90s did, which whatever.
Well, and then of course, you have to keep in mind we were traveling with two very, very attractive women, and not saying that Ursula or Jean couldn't hold their own, but there was a few. I definitely remember a few moments where some guys would get a little creepy.
Sure. Especially, when you're doing a house show and there's no security and there's no cameras and there's no accountability for anything,
We're having to self-police ourselves.
Oh, I know. Well, thank God, man. You were like, I wasn't exactly a scrapper back then.
I wasn't either. I just, but I had to. Yeah, it was like, it's funny you say that, because at some point I'm like, what's my role in this tour? Oh, so I'm definitely gonna be, I'm roading, maybe doing some driving, but also I'm like, I think it might have been there was definitely there was some show we played somewhere, might have been, I forget where, it was at a house, but somebody got kind of weird with Gene, but I remember at that point, it's like, I am security. I'm at least, a presence. I may not be able to fight as much but I think
dude, if you weren't around, it would have been my Twiggy. I weighed about $120 back then. And it would have been me probably getting my ass beat down every night. It was good to have another, warm body with some road experience in them with us.
Yeah.
That was pretty necessary.
And
somehow Ursula talked your ass. Like I'm talking all this time about Ursula talking people into booking our shows. Somehow Ursula convinced your ass to get in a van and go on the road for 3 weeks for a free meal here and there.
Oh, it was for me, it was just like a chance, big chance of a lifetime to go on, because at that point I'd been, I'd done tours with Vera Verse that were the last one we did was about a month and a half long jaunt. So I already,
been out there a long time.
So Maritime, so you guys broke up, and I want to find out more about how that went down, but it sounds like it's pretty sad. But and you took a break, and then what got you back into music again?
Well, I started another band with Ursula that didn't last very long, where I sang, because I had broken my arm. I couldn't play drums for a while, and just for fun, we started a band called Twin Haters that we did a little bit. It wasn't the best band in the world.
Did I play with that? Didn't I play with you guys?
Probably. What band was in like 2001, 2002?
That sounds about right. 2000. Yeah, because I remember. Yeah, that's the other thing that came up that in my memories was that at one point I was drumming for with Ursula, and I think it might have been you. Now it was.
There was a blurry period in there, and then after that, I started playing in a band called the Atlantic Divide, which was kind of a shoegazy band. That's when I got back into playing drums, and that band didn't really do very much other than it kind of introduced me to another like grouping of people that I've been connected with for a long time. We recorded at a studio called Million Yen that had done like Local H records and Tossers records. And I mean, I hadn't been keeping on top of things. I knew all those Tossers guys from back in the 90s. And I started, then Andy started a band called the Avondale Ramblers, which that started in like 2007. And it was kind of Irish folk rock, punk rock stuff. And we were playing a lot of shows with the Tossers. And then Bones from the Tossers, who I've known since the 90s, decided in maybe 2010, 2011 that he didn't want to tour anymore. So those dudes, since I'd already been playing kind of like Celtic rock, reached out to me, and I did a couple tours with the Tossers as like their touring drummer. Bones was still very much in the band. He just didn't want to tour. And man, that was so much fun. And I really like kind of reconnecting with those dudes. And I mean, when you're from that little period from like 1992 to like 1998, there is like an everlasting bond, I think, between all of us from that time, because I did 2 rehearsals with the Tossers. I flew out to San Diego and we did 2.5 weeks up the coast, and like reconnecting with Tony and Aaron and Mike Pawala, and then Peter, who's their newer bass player. He replaced Dan Shaw. He and I like really hit it off. Like we're kind of peas in a pod. So I did a couple of those tours and then didn't do much for a few years. And then Bones eventually quit. And it was either they basically, and this is how that is such a family. They said like, let's ask Fred to do it. If Fred can't do it, we'll just call it quits. And I'm like, yeah, dude, this because Tossers is one of my favorite bands from that time. Like now I get to play in one of my favorite bands.
That's like the dog that really knows how to fucking party.
Running short on time, but and I don't know, you probably met Peter at Ursula's thing, because he plays bass in the Tossers and he plays guitar in You Died. Peter became part of the whole You Died thing, just because he and I have a lot of similar musical tastes. And like right now I don't know if it's just because we're all grown-ups and we let a lot of shit go that we wouldn't have when we were younger. It's just I'm 47 years old, and it's the most comfortable musical experience I've ever been in right now. Everybody's really good at what they do, and nobody really wants to. No one's like trying to make out with someone else's girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever.
Right.
Like,
yeah, none of that Fleetwood Mac shit. None of that Fleetwood Mac shit.
Or you know, most people have either like stopped drinking or they've had decades to learn how well they can handle their liquor and stuff. It's just really this is the most. There is something to be said about the old days when we were like, you know, rambling around and getting in trouble and escaping a city in the middle of the night because things got shitty. But man, there's something nice about sleeping in a hotel room now when you're on the road and being with people that you really like, and being with people who are like good at their instruments and people who don't get too drunk to play and stuff. It's really, really fun. So, but that being said, it all kind of comes around. We're all still here. We're all still playing, right? And you eventually wind up linking back up with the people who are still playing. You know, people start dropping off the face of the earth, and
Yeah.
when you get a little older, you got to pull from the pool that you know. And thankfully, everybody's pretty stand-up human being.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And then
No,
we
that's
shit like this and having podcast talks on a Wednesday afternoon.
yeah. No,
That's
that's this is where it all leads to. Just like
because we're too old to go to a show at 11 o'clock. This is how we
so yeah. No, I bring the show to all the masses that don't want to leave their house. So man, I can talk more. I know you got a few minutes. I'm really excited about You Died, and you have a new record coming out.
Yeah. So we've and this really kind of made me feel like I was a kid again, because we made this record. We made a record previous to this that basically me and a guy named Dave Lugo recorded together. He's no longer with the band, but then we kind of put it together as a band. And so this is the first release we've had as like this, like a whole band. And it was so much fucking work, and it cost so much goddamn money to do. Like, back in the day, you'd put out a 7-inch, you might spend like $1,000 all in on recording time and vinyl pressing. Holy shit, man. I'm like pulling more hours at work just to afford this shit. But it kind of makes me feel like it did back in the day. Like, it's a little more grassroots. We're definitely suffering to make it happen. But yeah, October 18th, the album comes out on streaming stuff. And then I think the next week we start shipping vinyl. And we just got like, I'm getting too old to do, this is going to sound really stupid and shitty, but I think just now that I'm older, when you start to wonder how many more of these you have left in you. Like the recording process and scheduling everybody and doing all this and spending all this money. I really wanted to make this super cool, and I think it's going to be really, really cool. And we got a lot of people who are kind of in our same boat, artists and videographers and editors and recording people and stuff, who are also kind of like, yeah, I don't know how many more of these I have left in me, so let's do something really cool. And we got so lucky having Sarah Giroux, who did our music video that's going to be out next week. It's like a David Cronenberg like epic of a music video. Unbelievable. I've seen a rough cut of it. It's so cool. The record's coming out on we're doing colored vinyl and all that kind of shit. And I guess when you get to be our age, it's nice that we all have real jobs and can use our expendable income to do stuff like this. But again, I wanted to make something really, really cool, whether people like it or not. I don't give a shit. I really like it. It's really, we're all really proud of it. So we're going to start playing pretty soon. With the record's coming out October 18th. We have a record release show on November 15th at Reggie's. And then we'll see where things go from there. And then in March, I hit the road with the Tossers. And it's kind of like I have like a schedule for the year with these bands now, which is nice. You have to make it a little more predictable when you're not in your 20s. to bring another guest onto the podcast.
Oh, well, shoot. Here, since we're showing off dog, what's your doggy's name?
This is Pearl. We've got another one who's
So
who's that?
that's Mochi. He's the
Mochi.
yeah.
How much does Mochi weigh?
Actually, he's about 12 pounds.
Okay, this one's about 4.5. She's
Oh,
no.
Pearl. And
Dude,
well, the reason why.
So sorry, go ahead.
Oh, the reason why I know how much he weighs is because I just took him to the vet. So it was about, yeah. It was about 12 pounds.
Who's 18 pounds and she's supposed to be 12. She's 6 pounds. But hey, man, I'm so sorry to cut this off. I've got to head back to work before I lose my fucking job.
No. You got it. You take care of that. But thank you for joining. Let's do this again if you want to do a part 2.
This was so good just to catch up, or just fucking hit me up if you do happen to be out at one of those 11 p.m. shows.
Yeah.
I guess. All right, Angel, man, this was so much fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fred. Have a good day at work.
Later,
bye, Pearl.
man.
All right. That was Fred Frey, folks. Thanks for tuning in to the Firesign Chats. Hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks.